So Joe Biden and Kamala Harris got arguably their biggest endorsement yet. It's from The Rock. Take a look.
Hey, DJ.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey, guys. I got to tell you, well, it is so good seeing you guys. Senator Harris, it's a pleasure to finally see you and finally meet you.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to see you. I'm a huge fan of everything from Fast and Furious, all of them, to Jumanji. So thank you for your work.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for your work. Let me start off by saying, guys, I've been a lucky guy over the years in my life and my career to have been part of and participated in some real defining moments. And I have never publicly endorsed a presidential candidate or a vice presidential candidate in my life over my career. So I figured let's kick this conversation off this way by me officially publicly endorsing you both to become president and vice president of our great country.
Thanks,
Oh, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
That's
Means a great
incredible.
deal to us, for real. Thank you.
Really. Thank you.
You guys are both obviously experienced to lead. You've done great things. Joe, you've had such an incredible career. You've led, in my opinion, with great compassion and heart and drive, but also soul. And you and I talked about that in the past and how important soul is. And Kamala, I'm going to embarrass you just for a little bit because I'm going to talk a little bit about your amazing experience. And you have been an attorney, a district attorney, a state attorney, a U.S. senator, smart, tough. I've seen you in those hearings. And in my opinion, you are a certified badass.
I'm honored and thank you for that. That's a huge compliment from you.
You're welcome. Joe, you and I have talked about the relationship that you had with your father. You know, this idea of respect and earning respect that our parents have taught us. My dad always said, respect is given when it's earned. Question I had is, how will the both of you earn the respect of all the American people once you're in that White House?
By doing what we say we're going to do, by keeping our word, by leveling with the American people, by taking responsibility. When we fail, acknowledge it. We're not going to be perfect, but take responsibility. Say, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I believe, and tell the truth. That sounds so basic, but the American people are strong. They're tough. They can take anything if you level with them and tell the truth. And one of the ways we're going to do it is demonstrate we mean what we say. Our administration, DJ, is going to look like America. It's going to be representative of all of America.
Absolutely. Kamala, how do you feel? How do we earn it? How do we earn it with our own two hands?
Well, you know, to your point, DJ, it's about trust, right? And as we know, the nature of trust is that, like Joe was saying, and you've said, it's a reciprocal relationship. You give and you receive trust.
Yes.
And one of the foundations of trust is truth. You must speak truth, but here's the reality. Truth can sometimes be really difficult to hear. And for that reason, sometimes people don't speak it. But you cannot have trust if you don't speak truth. You know that as a parent. We know that as parents. You have to speak truth. And as long as there is an understanding that it is being spoken not to confront, not to hurt, but to deal with things the way they must be handled, I think that has to be part of the core of what we do as we go forward, because to your point, we're facing as a country so many challenges, and people are grieving. I mean, people are grieving the loss of life, the loss of jobs, the loss of certainty, the loss of normalcy. And to heal and get through this, we're going to have to be honest about what healing will require.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that Joe and I really do have in common, which is we're motivated by healing, but we know to do that, we have to be honest about what it's going to take.
Yes, absolutely. You know, and to that point, when you're honest with a scenario and people who you care about, and obviously you guys, all of us care deeply about our American people. that when you mentioned the word decency, you mentioned the word respect and honesty, dealing with this, but it leads right into making progress, but through a humanity, and how important that progress is, but through humanity. And thank you for saying that.
I think that conversation was tailor-made to piss me off. The Rock, listen, when I was younger, I loved WWF, as it was called at the time. Now it's WWE, just as much as anybody. And so he's kind of been, ever since my childhood, he's been, a figure who's been known, famous, interesting guy. And then obviously he became the biggest movie star on the planet post the wrestling era for him. And he's a mega superstar. He's like an A+++ list celebrity. He's as famous as it gets. And so this is, I honestly think it might help a little bit, just because of the degree of fame that he has achieved is almost beyond anybody's comprehension. He'd get recognized anywhere in the world. So it might help a little bit. But having said that, not a single policy was mentioned. Not a single one. And you get the sense that this is three people talking who are obviously clearly economically comfortable, and they really just don't get the moment. They can't relate to the fact that we have a pandemic that killed 200,000 Americans, and we have what is effectively an economic depression, a colossal downturn. And you get the sense they don't have the urgency. They don't sense the urgency that regular people are feeling. So really, it's almost like this conversation was created at a time where the country wasn't falling apart. You know what I mean? Like, this endorsement could have been done in like 1999. It just feels like there's not a weightiness to it, and they're going through the motions to act like it's a normal election year. So some of the things that got under my skin, first of all, they keep calling him DJ. You want to know why they keep calling him DJ? To leave the impression that they already know him and they're close and they're comfortable with him. And I have no doubt that staffers told them, like, this is what we're going to do. It's one of those, like, psychological tricks to make people think, oh, so I guess they already kind of know each other. They're calling him DJ. And they make a point of doing it a few times. Like at the beginning, Biden does, hey, DJ. Like, hey, my buddy, like we saw you last month at the barbecue or something. It's just little things like that. I don't know. They piss me off, man. It's disingenuous. Then, of course, we lead to just the airy-fairy, like, talking without saying anything stuff. Biden talks about, The Rock says that he's endorsing them because Biden leads with compassion, heart, drive, and soul. What does any of that mean? That doesn't mean anything. That's just flowery sounding words that you're attributing to this guy. A guy, by the way, who wrote the crime bill, which led to the mass incarceration crisis. Are we going to pretend like that's not the case? Are we going to pretend like he didn't support the Iraq War? Are we going to pretend like he didn't support NSA spying, which illegally and unconstitutionally collects all of our metadata? I mean, guys, I wish this wasn't the case, but it is the case. Are we going to pretend like he didn't repeatedly try to cut Social Security by working with Republicans? That's not compassionate. That's not leading with, like, heart and drive. But that doesn't even mean anything. It's like they know they can't lean on his record, so they default to, let's just say, happy-sounding words. Then he says about Kamala, the reason he's endorsing her, she was a district attorney, a state attorney, a U.S. senator, and a certified badass. And it's like, there are Republicans who have that same career arc. Would you endorse a Republican because they were a district attorney, a state attorney, a U.S. senator, and then a badass? No. See, there's no substance there. There's no substance. Kamala Harris is a person who laughed at the idea of legal marijuana in 2014, as recent as 2014. She laughed at the idea. wanted to lock up parents of kids for truancy. Are we going to talk about the specifics? Are we going to talk about the details? No, she let Steve Mnuchin off the hook. Steve Mnuchin, the Goldman Sachs fraud, who now is the Treasury Secretary, by the way, because he didn't go to prison because Kamala Harris didn't prosecute her, and that was against the wishes of her own office. The Rock talks about respect. Kamala says this is about trust and truth, motivated by healing. And then, of course, they bring it home with, it's about honesty, decency, and progress through humanity. None of that means anything. None of it means anything. For the love of God, at least don't insult our intelligence. Like, at least give me something real. At least be like, hey, the reason I'm endorsing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is because they say they're for a $15 minimum wage, so they're in favor of a living wage, and Biden just talked about how he's going to sign a Buy America executive order, which would create a bunch of jobs here at home in the U.S., and we desperately need that. Give me something. Give me something tangible. Something. Something. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. It's like they are the parody of the vapid Hollywood types. It's just empty. Everything's empty. Not substantive. Not serious. But there will be some small segment of the population who will hear this and will love it. It's like, okay, but let's just acknowledge what it is. Let's just acknowledge what's going on. Let's be clear that this has nothing to do with actually fixing the country and addressing any of the zillion problems. This is people that have made it to the top of the hierarchy of the United States sitting around and telling each other how great they are and just using vague descriptors that really mean nothing. As I said, this was kind of tailor-made to get under my skin. I mean, I hate them all. I despise Trump with a burning passion. He's horrendous. But it kills me that, like, this is the opposition. It's just, they don't seem to have learned much from the last election, where Hillary had a laundry list of celebrities that she trotted out as having endorsed her. And it's like, what if the majority of Americans really are culturally detached from this kind of stuff, you know? Because Hollywood does sort of feel like a little insular clique and club, and an elitist club that kind of looks down at regular people. So maybe it's just the wrong direction overall. That people really do feel like Hollywood is as smug as it is. Again, I do think overall this will probably help because The Rock is almost like uniquely liked. But I just hate that this is what politics has become. And here's some wild speculation for you to end this segment. I think he might have some political aspirations in the future. I get that vibe from him. I get that sense from him. He talks like somebody who wants to eventually become a politician. You know, following in the footsteps of Arnold Schwarzenegger. It would kind of be a similar career arc. So, who knows? But there you have it. Their biggest endorsement to date. And they said absolutely nothing of substance in the endorsement.